Hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you. As you know, every week I have to go and look under rocks and under cliffs and in the ocean. And oh my gosh, we go everywhere. This week we're going to hang out in Salt Lake City. And I found a guy that knows all about intellectual property. And the cool part is that Amazon, Intel, and IBM also talked to him about this. So we're going to unpack a bunch of awesome stuff. Devin Miller, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing wonderful as ever. Couldn't be better.
Awesome. You are the founder of Miller IP Law, and I just learned IP means intellectual property. So why don't you fill in the rest of us on what IP stands for in your world?
Yeah, absolutely. So intellectual property, or IP for short, really kind of is an umbrella term within the legal community. So it includes patents, trademarks, and copyrights. Now, what are patents, trademarks, and copyrights? So patents are for protecting invention. So something that has a functionality that does something. And that could be anything from hardware, software, mechanical stuff, or, even medicine and medications. That all that falls under patents. Trademarks are more for brands. So if you're to think of a name of a company, name of a product, a logo, a catchphrase, all of those are falling under trademarks. And the last thing is for creatives, and that's for copyright. So creatives are going to be for copyrights are going to be anything from a painting, a sculpture, a photo, a book, a movie, a podcast, any of those things. They're going to fall under copyrights. And so really, all three of those are ways for businesses to both protect what they create. It kind of goes along with what sounds like intellectual property. So not physical property, but something you create and develop and make your part of your business. And then it also builds an asset in. So it's something that becomes valuable to your business.
That's awesome. So how in the world would somebody, it's funny because most people think insurance is a mandatory thing. You're protecting your stuff, right? A car, a business, your customer, whatever. But the information, I got to believe it gets a little bit harder for information. I wrote a book called Growing on Purpose. People can steal that information all the time, I'm assuming. And quite frankly, that's what a lot of us want for that to happen. So I'm assuming you're protecting your ideas, you're protecting your stuff, are the three words that I wrote down for myself. How do we know, as an entrepreneur, how would I know when I need to protect my stuff and when I don't? Are there any simple tips that you can help us with there?
Yeah, probably the simplest way that I at least think about it would be if you're building a business and there's something, whether it's the creatives, it could be you wrote a book, and let's say, the difference. Let's say you wrote the next Harry Potter, or Lord of the Rings, or Tom Clancy, or whatever. There are a lot of books out there, but those are very popular followings. And you're probably not going to want somebody to go write a sequel to Harry Potter and not pay you for it because you did all the work to build the brand. And so that's kind of the thing where you get into whether it's an invention, whether it's a brand of your business, or whether it's, something you created. If it's something that's integral to your business. In other words, if somebody to come along and copyright it, knock it off, or otherwise start using it, it would be an ouch factor. It'd be like, man, that hurts our business. We're seeing decrease in sales. Anything if that were going to happen, that's when you probably look to protect it. So you think of a brand. If you're Pepsi or Coke or Apple or Amazon or Nike, if you started knocking off their brand, it's going to cut in their sales, because if you just start to use the same trademark and use the same name for your company, people are going to think, oh, there's, that they're associated. Same thing with the patent. Let's say you put in a ton of blood, sweat, and tears, and you took 3 years of your life and hundreds of thousands of dollars and created the next best iPhone or whatever that might be. And then somebody comes and says, oh, that makes sense. Kind of like the magic trick where once you know how it's done, it's a lot easier to replicate. Same thing with a lot of inventions. Once you create them, people can reverse engineer it, see how it works. So that's kind of how I would always look at it. If it's going to it's going to hurt your business and make it difficult to move forward, or it's going to eat into your sales, that's when you're going to want to protect it.
So how does that transition over then, Devin, into ideas? Because obviously I could say I have an idea, no one steal it. Well, there's a lot that's been thought of prior to me. So how do you look at it from an idea perspective?
Yeah, an idea can mean a couple different things, at least in my world. So, if it's just hey, I want to create a perpetual motion machine that creates free energy that never runs out of energy, and everybody will have energy for the rest of eternity.
Sure.
if all your idea is that's your idea, you're not going to be able to protect it, because unless you can very well describe how it works. And that's kind of the difference between what I would say is an idea versus an invention. You don't have to necessarily make it, but you have to be able to, in enough or in sufficient detail, be able to describe how it works. And so, if you're to say, I want to create a perpetual motion machine, and you have no idea how, you can't go and patent that, because they're going to say you have to provide the details. And so that's really how you get to it. Now, once you get to the level of details and you're saying, okay, I could go out and I can explain it to someone, somebody else in the industry, somebody else that knows this kind of technology, and they'll say, okay, I get it. I could go and create it, and I'd be able to understand it. Then you've got to the level where you can protect the invention. So you don't have to actually make it or have a prototype or physically have or created it, but you do have to explain it to that level of detail.
Okay. So drill down a little bit further for me. What if I have like a 3-step process to amazing customer service, or 3 steps to, the best, to build the best team ever? Those were 2 of the hot topics in my book, was the team and the customer. So if we were creating a, 3-step program, and again, the number's arbitrary, but a process, a program, something that we thought of, I thought of, whatever, how do you protect that from other people profiting with that, I guess I'll say?
You probably can't.
Okay.
That's the short
Which is
answer.
cool.
I'll break it down a little bit more. So, and I'll give you a couple ways that you could protect it. But the actual process, so generally and that's almost kind of what would be kind of a business method, at least in the patent world. It's kind of a way that you go about conducting business. Now, there is technically an ability to get business method patents. However, they're incredibly difficult, and they're very low likelihood that you're going to get it, because really the 2 standards or 3 standards for patentability is, 1, has anybody else previously invented this? Somebody else has previously invented it. You can patent on something that's already invented. 2 is it can't be obvious. In other words, you can't just take a couple things that are already out there and you say, oh, I'll put these 2 things together. And it would have been obvious you could have put those 2 things together. You can't get a patent on it.
Okay.
And then the third one is going to be what's called abstract. And abstract is kind of where a lot of business methods or those type of things fall in. It's something that people have been doing it for a long time in their head or on pen and paper, or it's kind of already out there. You can't just simply say, oh, I'm going to write it down, or I'll put it on a device or anything of that nature and be able to capture. So a lot of times when you get into kind of the way that you do good customer service, a lot of those are already out there now. People may not have written it down, or it may not have been out there, but they're doing it a lot in their heads, or they're doing a lot of things in trainings and stuff like that. So that's where it tends to get difficult. Where you can go about protecting it is typically, there's a lot of, whether it's professional coaches and marketers and salespeople, some of them do awesome and some of them struggle. What's the difference? Well, they build a good brand, they build a good following. So a lot of times it's less on the actual steps of doing it, but that you build a brand that people are going to trust and actually want to use the steps, because they know that you know what you're doing and you have experience and you convey it well. So a lot of times it falls more under trademarks as far as building that brand. And then for the specific book, you can copyright the steps. Now, somebody else comes along and writes it a different way, and they have 3 steps, but they phrase it and teach it in their own way, they can do that. But if they come along, copy your book, then you can't.
Wow. So like, for instance, the SMART goals, the specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. If you have that acronym SMART, and if you create something like that, is it suggested that you copyright, patent, somehow do something with that information? Does that help you as the creator of that information?
Yeah. Now I'll give you, you're asking an attorney whether or not you should copyright.
I know. Oh, that's right. No attorney jokes
but
either today, right? I forgot about that. So
everybody has good attorney jokes, but no, I mean, I'd flip the question around. I assume you probably know who Franklin Covey is, 7 Habits of Highly Effective, people or individuals. Yeah. And that is a massive brand. They have the 7 steps, they have all the books around it, they have other programs, they have planners and everything else. And so, to him, that brand is, very valuable. And so they've trademarked every one of the 7 steps. They've trademarked the brand, they've copyrighted the books. And so if you're building something that's, you're trying to build a following, you're trying to get people behind it, then yeah. And now if you're just putting out your first book and you're saying, I think this is good, but I have no idea if people would buy it, you can hold off for a bit and actually see if it gains traction. But if you're starting to gain traction, say, hey, this is really getting, a lot of people are buying it, it's becoming valuable to my business, I'm the next Franklin Covey or whoever you want to choose, then you're probably going to want to protect it.
Huh. Wow. Okay. So now I'm going to look at it from the reverse
Sure.
because he's the prime example, because I think it's one of his step number 4 or tip number 4
Hmm.
is seek first to understand and then be understood. So I
Hmm.
use that a lot in my training for communication when I'm in front of a group, in front of a team, whatever it is. Am I like stealing his stuff? I mean, how does that work if we're utilizing somebody's wisdom from the past to be able to share that with a group? So no one listened to the answer because I don't want to be in trouble if I am. So,
That's right.
I'm just
We'll
curious if
just
I'm
play this out, but no.
am I in
So
trouble here, Devin? I'm just curious.
potentially, I mean, now there's a range of, I'll give you a range of trouble. Now, if you're in a conversation and say, hey, Franklin Covey teaches this, or hey, one of the highly, steps of a highly effective person is going to be this, and you're
Yep.
doing it as part of a training, you know, technically, are you in violation? Maybe it's a bit of a gray area, but typically you're probably fine if it's part of a training, a live session. Now,
Yep.
on the other hand, let's say you said, great, now I'm going to go write a book about this as being a highly effective person is going to be doing this, and I'm going to take what he says and do that, and I'm going to label it the same thing. You're probably got a problem. So in the sense, if you're probably doing training, you're doing coaching, you're doing like your conversations with people, low likelihood that you're going to have any issues. If you go put it in writing, put it in a book and start to promote it, especially if you're using the same terminology and the same phrasing, then you've got
Sure.
a potential issue.
Gotcha. Okay. Sorry if you're listening. I've been using your stuff. No, I just was curious. Thanks for sharing that because,
Sure.
a lot of people that are out trying to share information with other people, not everything you come up with is unique. I mean, obviously, you try and put a unique spin on it, but in this case, it was so brilliant to think about communication and how you're actually you're seeking first to understand the person that you're talking to rather than having them try and understand you, which leads me to a super cool segue. Devin he's a major in electrical engineering, and he also has a major in Mandarin Chinese. So how would you say like say something cool in Mandarin Chinese for us, will you?
Sure. 我姓穆，穆姓尼，我是一个engineer，忘记了怎么说 engineer，然后我很喜欢帮助人。There you go. I don't know. I was off the cuff, so I just basically introduced myself, my
Oh my
name,
gosh. The
engineering,
only
and
word
then
I understood there was engineer. So they don't have their own word for engineer, huh?
they do. It's Genza Gongcheng. So if you want to get technical, I'm just throwing it in there so you catch on to something. But
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Well, so okay, back to reality. So Positive Polarity is the company name that I created. And is that something that should be trademarked? Is that something that should be there? Should I do something with that to try and prevent other people from using it? Or what, for the people listening, they have a company name, they probably have some mission statements, they have different things going on like that. So how do we know, what guidance would you give us listeners to try and maneuver that those waters?
yeah, I'll go back to what I did, because the question is how, is a trademark valuable to you? In other words, hey, have you built books around it? Have you done coaching? Have you done other branding? Have you done your podcast and everything else? And if you're saying, yeah, I've got a lot of following, I've built a reputation, I've invested a lot of money and effort to market,
Yeah.
then the question is if someone were to come along and name their company the same or a similar name, would it hurt you? I would assume yes, but that would be the question I'd ask if I was in your shoes. I'd ask myself, and I say, yeah, if somebody comes along and does that, if that's going to hurt my business, I'm going to want to file on it first, because generally the first person to file on any of these, whether it's patents, trademarks, or copyrights, is always in the much stronger position. Now, you still have some rights if you've been using it first, but they're fairly limited rights, and so it limits your ability to expand your business, to do other products, to do other things, and be able to continue to grow. And so generally, if you're saying, hey, this is a big part of my business, it's a worthwhile thing, then yeah, you'd probably go after getting a trademark on it so that you can protect yourself, your business, and also protect others from doing it. Plus, if you're to ever, let's say you get to retirement age and you're saying, okay, I want to sell off my business, or I want to, license it, or I want to have other people kind of be underneath me and I'll coach them on how to coach it, all
Sure.
those things, you're going to want to be able to have that asset in place so that I retire, I can go sell this to somebody else. Because they're going to say, well, especially for service-based industries, they're going to say, what's the value of your business? Yeah, you've got some followers. Yeah, you've got some, email lists, which all have value, but a lot of it's built up in your brand. And, the difference between somebody starting out today and somebody that's been doing it for 20 years is they have 20 years of brand or establishing a brand, and you're going to want to have that as an asset for any time in the future as well.
Wow. So, and these are, I guess, I don't know if these are questions that people don't think of, or we're cruising along at 1,000,000 miles an hour every week, and this isn't really much that we don't stop long enough to think until somebody, parks right next to you and has the same exact company name as you. So, what I liked about your website was it looked like you had some pretty specific packages. And, I think people are fearful of anybody, a coach, CPA, an attorney, anybody that charges by the hour, you feel a little bit vulnerable and exposed, mm-hmm. right? So it looked like you had some packages that are kind of fixed. So, I mean, if I wanted to, is copyright the right, what word would I use if I wanted to protect my positive polarity? Is that a trademark?
Trademark. Uh-huh.
Okay. So if I wanted to trademark positive polarity and I made that decision to do that moving forward, I believe there was a package that you had for that, correct?
Yeah. So short answer, or probably the longer answer. But when I started Miller IP Law, first of all, we focus a lot on startups and small businesses. One of the difficulties that Hugh hit on was that a lot of times, especially if you're a startup, small business, you're going to say, hey, I don't want to go spend a whole bunch of time with an attorney, sit down with them. They're going to charge me by the minute. And then I'm going to walk out of there and I'm going to spend several $100s and I'm not even going to know if they're going to tell me they can't even help me or that I don't need something. Sure. So when we started, I just said, okay, one of the fears is people don't know, if you're on hourly, you never know how much it's going to cost. It always seems to be more expensive, and it always grows, and there's always things you don't anticipate. So I moved everything over to flat fees. And so basically we give you a flat fee. That's how much it costs. And you don't have to worry about, is it an hourly or billed, or how much time are they taking or anything else? Or do I have a question? Do I ask a question? Because they're going to charge me 30 minutes to answer an email, that kind of thing. So with the trademark, the way that trademarks work, and giving us the quick insight, and then I'll give you the cost, is that when you file a trademark, you file it for different goods or services. In other words, if you to think of Nike, they have a trademark for athletic wear, sports gear, and apparel. They don't have it for automobiles because they don't do anything in the automobile industry. So when you file a trademark, you have to say, here's the goods or here's the services I'm going to be using my trademark for. And that allows people to coexist so that way, somebody's over here doing a restaurant, somebody's doing consumer goods, somebody's doing, medical devices. They can all coexist because people wouldn't think that a restaurant's going to sell medical devices, right? So now circling back to your question, which is how much is a trademark? For us, what we do is you split it into, it's kind of two flat fees. So one flat fee is for us to prepare the application, and that's $400, and that regardless of how many classes or categories. When we prepare the application, we'll go out and we'll search and say, okay, what are the categories based on what you're doing, your goods and your services, what you'll likely need. And then based on that, we'll come back with recommendations. Here's the categories you're going to need. And it's $450 for each category. So if it was all one category, you're going to talk $850 to file a trademark application. Yeah, 2 categories, $1,300, 3 categories, $1,750, and so on. So that's just based on the governmental fees that they charge you a fee for each category. So that's the kind of way that we start to set it up to make it kind of easier to understand. Here's how much I'm in. I can choose how many categories, how much makes sense. And then you're not wondering how much a billable hour is and how expensive things are going to get.
Sure. Wow. Well, and that's really, I never knew that. So if I wanted to open up a Nike restaurant, they couldn't say. I mean, I always thought that, I guess I never thought, but I've just assumed as we were talking that you couldn't do that. But until because they're not in that sandbox, so to speak, they can't really say anything about that.
Now, because Nike's so famous, has so much dollars, it's probably a bad example because they're probably going to sue you just for the fun of it.
Will you represent me in court then here, Devin, when I open up my Nike restaurant?
Sure, why not? As long as you want to pay the attorney's fees, I'll do whatever.
Exactly.
But I mean, yeah. So if it's really famous, if you go and you try and name your Apple restaurant or Nike restaurant, something like that, they're probably famous, that they're going to come after you regardless if they're in the right or the wrong. But generally, yeah, if you're something that's you have a smaller business that's named this, but it's completely different than yours, most of the time you can coexist.
Wow, that's cool. I never knew that. Thanks for sharing. And I know that when I started my business, I think this was in 2012, I think I went on to LegalZoom and, acted like I knew what I was doing and had no clue what I was doing. So what other things do you get involved with besides the copyright, the patent, and the trademark piece?
Yeah, so we do, certainly that's kind of under intellectual property. We also will do business formation. So if you need an LLC, an S Corp, or C Corp, and then there's a few other kind of business related documents you can consider. NDA for a non-disclosure agreement, keep information confidential. Independent contractor agreement, use a lot of independent contractors. You really want to have nailed down who has the ownership. One of the biggest mistakes is a lot of times you'll go and hire an independent contractor, think, well, I'm paying them, I own whatever they create, and it's solely mine. If you don't have an agreement in place, they actually can a lot of times maintain ownership. In other words, you can use what they provide to you, but they still own whatever they create. So it can create a lot of issues. So NDAs, we do some like social media takedown. If you need to have somebody that's infringing on your social media site, using your copyrights, using your trademarks, we can help you take down. Same thing with websites. So a lot of times it's really kind of business related services as well as intellectual property.
Wow. And do you, because of your location in Salt Lake City, are you able to do things all over the country, or do you focus just in your area, or what's your logistics look like?
Yeah, so the nice thing with all we do is on the federal level. So patents, trademarks, copyrights are all on the federal level. So we're not stuck in any one given state. In fact, we have more clients outside of Utah than we have inside of Utah. We have everything from Alaska to Hawaii to New York to California and everything in between. Just because we're able to capture a broader audience because we're as long as it's in the U.S. we can help them.
Wow. So do you counsel startups then as well? I mean, in addition to the legal side, are you helping them along with any business growth or any ideas? Or when somebody has an idea on their business, I mean, there's the legal part, which obviously you're well qualified on. I'm just curious on the non-business, what do you do in that situation? Do you help people with that, trying to understand and navigate those waters?
Yeah, I mean, as opposed to legal advice, my business advice is what you're worth, what you pay for it. So I'm always happy to provide counsel. But the hard thing with so many businesses are so different. I talk and I do counsel to answer your question. But I'll talk with somebody that's doing baby products, and then I'll talk with somebody that's doing software applications. Then I'll talk with somebody that's doing something automotive, and then I'll talk with somebody that's doing app development, and then I'll talk with somebody that's doing wearables. And so it's so diverse that every business is different. Then there are general business advice that I can definitely give and I can help out, but a lot of times, more often than not, what I'm doing is more making connections with other people. If I have clients or people I've come into, then I'll say, hey, I don't know as much about this, but I do know someone over here that has a lot more experience. You guys should probably connect. So a lot of times, if I can provide some business guidance and advice, and that in addition to legal or apart from the legal, I'm certainly happy to do so, and I do so for some of my clients. And half the time it's more of I'll connect them with people that I know are going to give a lot more experience and answers than I would.
Sure. Yeah. There's so much of that going on now, Devin. It's crazy how much connecting of dots there are. I think about, I've been doing my podcast for about almost a year and a quarter now, and you meet every week, you meet these people, and it's like, man, who can I connect this person with? Who can I connect that person with? I love making those connections. So, it's so cool that you have that mindset. And I think that people either have that mindset, right, or they don't. There seem to be like, and I don't want to put buckets, but I usually do. There's like givers and takers, right? There's people that are always giving. They're just like, who can I connect you with? Who do you want to meet? Who can I get to help you with your journey? There's just so many cool people out there that are in that giver bucket. So, you know, it's rare to find an attorney that is in that bucket. I mean, I've known attorneys over the years, and they just tend to be more introverted. They introspective, a lot more about the law. They know all those things, and they never really kind of look up to see, you know, what else is going on. So when you started your business, were you always on your own, or were you in corporate America for a while?
First of all, you'd have to define which business. So I've done several businesses. So when I first actually started, so I ended up getting 4 degrees as the backing up. So I got the electrical engineering, Mandarin Chinese. I got an MBA or Master's of Business Administration. I got a law degree. My first real business was actually while I was in doing my law degree and MBA degree, and I started a wearables business, and actually started out of a business competition, bought out the partners and built it from there. And it's still active and going along, and it's now an 8-figure business, and I'm a bit more passive. I still play a role in it, but not as active as I once was.
Sure.
So that one is kind of one that I've done. I've done a few other startups. Now, on the legal side, I worked for other law firms, some of the top 100 California big firms that were there, and I did that for about 6 years. And then about 3 years ago, I kind of had a bit maybe of an introspective moment where saying, what are the kind of the clients I want to work with, and where do I want my career to go? And more often than not, it was, I did the work for the Amazons and the Intels and the Red Hats and the Fords, but the clients I really loved were the startups and the small businesses, because that was where I had the most fun. They were the ones that they actually needed the counseling. They don't have a huge fund, and you're a very small cog in a very big wheel and churning out a lot of things. It's, sure, hey, we've got a business going, we need help, what do we need, kind of a thing. So that's when I started Miller IP Law. So I worked for other law firms for about 6 years, and then I've been doing my own law firm for about 3 years now.
And we love that. Every week I try and get to find people that have either been in or still are in corporate America, because there's a lot of people, on this show that listen every week, and they want to know the journey from corporate America to starting your own business. Now, granted, not many of us have 4 degrees. So, for the simpletons like me,
hey, my wife always says I got 3 degrees too many. So I'm right there. I'm right with everybody.
Yeah. Well, hey, if you can make that Mandarin Chinese degree work for you, buddy, then more power to you.
That's right.
But I'm just curious, for the people listening, was that, I think the biggest question that tends to come up is, when did you know, and what did that feel like when you knew that the hole, I'm going to call it a hole, you can call it whatever you want, but the hole in your heart that corporate America wasn't filling, when it was just like, man, there's just an itch there, it's not scratching, whatever that looked like. But there was a point in time when you were like, I want to do this on my own. Do you remember that time?
I remember the general time. I don't know if there was just one day I woke up and said, now today is a day type of a thing.
Sure.
But I remember so I've always kind of had that entrepreneurial, want to do my own thing kind of spirit. And that's why even when I was studying my degrees, I was starting my own businesses. And so, I've always kind of had a side hustle, which I call as a second full-time job, because I think you spend as much more time on the side hustle anyway. But I was kind of getting to a point, I've been doing it, working for big law firms, doing that for about 6 years. And I kind of, first of all, I was looking and saying, there's a lot of things that I don't like about legal industry, or I think I could do better. And, I don't know why, you anytime you get into a law firm, you're making decisions by committee, and you want to, I remember when I was with one of the big law firms, they were doing a website redesign, and it took them like 1.5 years to redesign their website, because they had to get everything approved by everybody. And I'm like, this is stupid. Like, you're going to have your website designed, and you're going to have to start all over because it's outdated again. And so, those kind of things I'm saying, I think I can do it better. I think there are things that the legal industry just doesn't do well, and I can't do that in a law firm. And then I also said, I'd rather make my own decisions, be able to, if I want to go in a different direction, if I want to try one out. So I was kind of getting to that itch, or that point of saying, hey, I've got enough experience. It was great to work for the big companies, because I got some great experience in the legal side of how other big companies do it. What are the good practices? What are the decisions? And then I said, okay, I've got enough experience. I've got enough of an itch, and I just want to go do my own thing. And so kind of as I was hitting those things, of just, it was kind of cumulative. It was kind of, well, I want to do this. Well, I can't do this because I'm in a law firm, and I want to try this out, and I want to do a podcast, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. and I can't do it because you're kind of restricted. They don't want you to expand beyond what they're hiring you to do, because that's what they're hiring you to do.
Yeah.
And so that
Yeah.
was kind of for me. And I just kind of hit that realization. So I went to my wife and kind of said, I'm going to start my own thing. And she says, well, as long as you can figure out how to pay the bills, I'm support you and I'm with you. And so by that time, I'd had enough clients. I'd actually built enough of my businesses that I had enough financial wherewithal that I could actually make the leap, jump over, and start my own thing.
Wow. That's so cool. And I tell you, I say every week, there's no right way to do it and there's no wrong way. There's your way to do it. And when people hear, I mean, think of what Devin just said. He said, I could do this better. And he said that he wanted to make his own decisions. A lot of times on the surface, if you're in corporate America and you're sitting next to somebody and they have that mentality, a lot of times that can be taken and misconstrued as ego, prideful, whatever. The reality is that, people have a passion and they want to do it different. They want to do it better. They want to do it themselves. And so I encourage people to make sure that, they're doing it with the right spirit. But the reality is that's why we live in this country. One of the reasons is because we can do this sort of thing. If you have something, I'm different. I start a business and then the next day, I like mine in 2012, I sold to my partner and it was 2:00 on a Tuesday. And it was, we grew it to about 10 million in annual sales. And I sold the company and he's like, so what are you going to do? I'm like, I don't really know, and the next day Positive Polarity was born. And so for me personally, I don't have a problem doing that. I don't tell people that's the way you got to do it. There's no right or wrong way. Maybe like you, where you were doing your side hustle for a long time, you got to remember that you have 4 kids, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So Devin's got 4 kids and a wife to feed and to be accountable to. So it wasn't like, I'm going to sell and let's just figure this out as we go. Right. That might not have went over as well. But, just, check yourself at the door when you think about someone in your vicinity saying, I want to do this, I can do it better and I want to do it. I want to make my own decisions. I mean, that's how entrepreneurs, turn into business owners. And if you're on this, today, and that's in your heart, that's why we're here. That's why people like me and people like Devin are here, to be able to help and encourage you, along the way, because we never know what product you're going to invent. We never know what solution you're going to come up with and what problem you're going to solve. So that's what's so cool about it. So, take away whatever is, for you, whatever you want on it. I'm just encouraging you to really listen, to somebody that's an attorney that could have easily, like he said, he could have just stayed in, the corporate world and skated along. But I'm guessing there was just something there kept gnawing at him, kept gnawing at you, right, Devin?
Yep.
And so, don't, if you're listening and that's you, just don't pretend it's not there. You don't have to change something today, but that's why people like Devin and people like myself are here to help you to be able to explore that. So as we start to come in for a landing on this today, I'm just thinking, like, on that startup area, for somebody that's listening, do you how do you charge people that are, because I know I've heard everybody say, I can't afford anything, that's why, quite frankly, I did, what was it called? What did I say it was? Whatever. Legal Zoom. Thank you. You forgot it already. I did Legal Zoom because I'm like, oh my gosh, for, I don't know, $200 or whatever, you can get your LLC. But the sad part is I had no clue what I was doing. And I was so filled with like pride that I didn't want to admit that to people at the time. So I needed people to come alongside me. So I'm trying to save people a bunch of pain in the butt, along the way. But what do you do when somebody says, man, I just can't afford this, or, oh my gosh, where am I going to get the money? I mean, is there some way that they can do some of the work themselves, or what do you tend to talk about with people that finances are a huge deal?
Yeah, and that's a great segue. So two things that we do. One is we offer a free 15-minute strategy meeting. So at least you can sit down, get some idea, get some strategy with an attorney is what you should be thinking about, what your roadmap is, what cost to expect. So if people want to do a free strategy meeting with me, my calendar, you can reach my calendar right at strategymeeting.com. So let's go to strategymeeting.com. You can grab it right there. Now, and the second thing is we do is because I hit into a lot of those, there's kind of a big stratosphere between startup, and that can be everything from a side hustle. I just have an idea all the way up to went out and got venture funding. We've got capital, or we've been in business for a few years. And so we hit a lot of people in different budgets and different things. But the commonality is with most startups and small businesses, you always have more things to spend money on than money to spend. Yep. And so one of the things that we came up with or we offer is what we call Snap Legal. And it's like LegalZoom, or only a lot better in the sense that it's a DIY service that people can use, that we have actually recorded videos, walk you through the information you'll need, and we actually will do a lot for you. And then you also have an option at the end where you can actually sync up with an attorney, get an hour of their time. They'll give you some thoughts and feedbacks and review things a bit. And so it kind of reduces the cost. Now, if you can afford it, whether it's me or anybody else, I still would go with an attorney. They're going to have the most experience. They're going to have the most background on things and give you the most best product. But this is one of those products that we said, hey, not everybody can afford attorney services. We want to offer an alternative for those people in those situations. So we offer our DIY legal products, which are called Snap Legal.
Wow. And that's on your website as well?
It is. Yep.
Okay, that's so cool. And one thing that just popped into my brain is like, I know that like if you, and I'm asking this as a question, if I know like a divorce attorney, I should probably let them stay with their specialty and not say, hey, can you help me on this business startup, right? I'm assuming that like medicine, legal and law has specialties in different areas. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Now, you'll get some attorneys that are hungry enough or they don't have enough business in them. They'll say yes to anything. I'm not faulting them. I get where they're at and they're trying to build a practice. But if you're really wanting some expertise, you're usually looking for an attorney that's specialized, that has an experience, that's done that quite a few times. Whether it's, hey, we've done 1,000 divorces and we know what we're doing, or done hundreds of patents or trademarks and we know what we're doing, because as you do it more, you get better, you see what works, what doesn't work, you get the feedback, and you continue to evolve and get better. Whereas it's more difficult when you get an attorney that just kind of will take whatever's coming in the door, then they're not going to have that experience. And so, yes, they may be a little bit less expensive, but they're going to be one where you get a little bit what you pay for, in the sense that they're probably not going to have the expertise. At that point, you're almost better to just go do it DIY, because you're starting from about the same point they are.
Gotcha. So in baseball world, we call that the utility infielder, right? Where they can play pretty much anywhere in the infield. Or they say, what do they say? Master of none. I can't remember that saying, right? But, my dad used to tell me that. But, it's one of those things that I think that's why I have people like Devin on the show, is because there's specialties here, and I sure wouldn't want somebody to, go astray and end up with a bad attorney. And so if you have questions on intellectual property, if you have a question on your startup, and quite frankly, the DIY stuff, that's so cool. And where else can you get, 15 minutes of an attorney's time for nothing? Now, here's a little well-known fact. You should just do 15 minutes, like 4 of them in a row on your calendar, right? Just kidding.
Way to give them the way to game the system. Yeah.
Don't do that. I'm just kidding. No. If they do,
if you want to game the system, but I'll probably realize that you're the same person every 15 minutes, and we probably won't make as much progress. But yeah, that's great.
Use a different name, you guys, okay? And then use a different voice, all right? No, I'm just kidding. So that's so cool. So if somebody wants to learn more, if this sparked something in them today, Devin, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Yeah, the one I already gave is probably the best way. You can go to strategymeeting.com. That links right to my calendar. Now, if they want to go out and just kind of check whether it's a DIY legal service, we also have a ton of content. So we have a lot of blog posts, we have videos, we have other information. So that's a great resource for people that are just trying to get an understanding. They can go to our website, which is Law with Miller, all one word, lawwithmiller.com. And that's a good starting point, as well as they can check out our flat fee prices and our videos and content. If they want to get with me specifically, go to strategymeeting.com.
That's so cool. And that's, again, that was what really drew me, in addition to the topic, was, it's rare to find people that will disclose what the price is for a package. And again, I think that, you know, things come up and sometimes it doesn't work. I'm thinking 95% of the time it works. And it's really one of those things that, again, if you want a trademark and it's $850, that's, you know, that seems that at least you know what you're getting yourself into up front. So
absolutely.
So awesome. So cool. Well, I got to say, this is the first for me in two fronts. Number one, the first that we've had Mandarin spoken on our show. So thank you for that. And secondly, I don't think I've ever had somebody with 4 degrees on. So my gosh, you crossed off 2 of my 4 things here that I needed to have happen today. So this is
all right. Well, mission accomplished.
So cool. I know, right? So man, so now I got to ask one last question. Is we ask every week, if there's, what's one thing that people don't know about you that you feel comfortable sharing?
Oh, I'm trying to think. Most people know. It depends on how well you know me. Hopefully, my wife knows most things about me.
Well, she doesn't count, dude. Come on.
But one of the things that she probably knows, but most others don't, is I love cars, and so I'm a big car guy. So when I was 15 years old, my dad had got a 67 Camaro that we fixed up together. So I still have that even as of today, and it sits in the garage, and I still drive it around every so often. And then because I loved cars and I was looking for something that was kind of a fun family vehicle, we also fixed up a 72 Volkswagen bus. So I got both the muscle car as well as the VW bus, depending on what mood I'm in.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I'm visioning at the stop sign or stoplight, I'm visioning the VW and you said Camaro, right?
Yep.
Who's in the Camaro, you or your wife?
I don't think my wife dares drive the Camaro. She's too scared. Now I'd let her, but she's scared that if I get a ding or a scratch or anything else, I'm gonna flip out because I've had it for so long. But on the other hand, she doesn't really like to drive stick with the VW bus, so she's probably in the passenger side either when I drive. But then it's whether I want to go drag the strip and have fun going fast, or if I want to go on a fun family trip and have everybody pile in the van. So.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much, Devin. This has been so helpful for me. And I know a lot of our listeners, you know, again, love to learn about that jump from corporate to entrepreneurship, so to speak. And there's also a lot of entrepreneurs that need, you know, the legal advice. They need somebody to come alongside them and be able to bounce things off of. So I'm hoping that we've given you a good place to start. You know, jump on Devin's website, get a 15-minute, you know, time with him, and, you know, get your questions answered. Be prepared. Remember that 15 minutes goes fast. So write your questions down and be prepared. So, because it's going to go awful fast. So awesome, Devin. Well, thank you so much. How do you say goodbye in Mandarin?
Zai Jin.
Soy Jim?
Zai Jin.
Zai, is it Z-I?
If you were to try and spell it in English, yeah, it'd be Z-I and then J-I-A-N, probably as close as you'd get.
Zaijan. Okay, wow. Why can't they just say goodbye? That's so much easier.
They'd probably say the same thing. Why can't they just say Zaijan?
Oh my gosh, goodbye. How do you say that? So awesome. Exactly. Well, thank you again so much. I appreciate the information here, Devin. And again, if you're ever in the Midwest, man, bring that Camaro by. I'd love to see it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks. And we'll see you guys next week.